podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, one of the world's leading international professional bodies, advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Helena Clayton, and in this 6-part series, we're exploring love in coaching. With 25 years of working in leadership and organisational development, for the last 8 years, I've been researching, writing about, and running leadership programs and workshops exploring the role of love in leadership, in work, and beyond. And for this series, I brought together 6 amazing coaches as my guests, all of whom are strong advocates and pioneers in what they do, and how they think about and integrate love into their coaching. 3 of them are writing books about love. 1 has just submitted their master's thesis about love, and another talks so boldly about love to their international and very senior leadership audiences that it takes my breath away. So thank you for being here and for bringing your curiosity to this thought-provoking series at a time when the world needs love more than ever. So today I am really delighted to be talking with Ian Mitchell. Hello, Ian. Good afternoon.
Helena, good afternoon. Great to see you.
Likewise. And I first met you, Ian, when I did my LDP training at Harthill, the tool for exploration, I guess, as well as coaching, based on the stages of adult or vertical development. And then I joined you in a supervision group or 2 after. So that's been our connection. So it's really great to be talking in this context about, to use your gorgeous phrase, doing the love stuff in coaching.
Yeah, well, it wasn't my phrase. I stole it from someone I was researching with, but it's a good phrase, yeah.
Isn't it? Will you begin maybe by telling folks who are listening a bit about who you are, what you do, what your work is in the world?
Yeah, it's a question I'm always asking myself, actually, those 3, who I am, what I do, what my work is in the world. Currently, I live in Ireland, in the north of Ireland. I'm quite Irish in my self-understanding, and I spent quite a while in the financial sector, but 15 years ago, I went into coaching and then into coach supervision. And I've been working with a firm called Harthill for 5-6 years now. As Helena said, we look a lot at how people's sense of identity comes together, hardens and shifts over time, and how that affects how we see our place in the world and how we understand the world that we're in. So the bulk of my time is I get paid for talking to people, which is really great,
Lovely. So I'm tending to ask this question as a first question. Let's see if it lands for us today, which is something about the things that people are bringing to coaching these days, to you anyway, or to supervision. The field of coaching, if you like. I'm wondering what you're noticing, what you're seeing. Is it evolving, changing? Clearly my interest, or one of them is, and does that invite in more love? But that's in parenthesis. What are you seeing that people are showing up with these days?
I'm glad you said showing up to me, because I'm not convinced that the people I work with necessarily are seeing the same thing showing up that everybody else is. I mean, I don't know, but so that's why I'm not convinced. But there are several degrees. I think I'm finding people are not so interested in being performative anymore. We've come through a significant period of time where the purpose of a coach has been to help people perform. And I think people have seen through that a little bit. As I said earlier, I spend a lot of my time working with coaches, and I'm finding a real sense of we're wanting to engage with the world in a different way. We want to find out what really matters to us, as opposed to how do we manage to fulfill other people's expectations around us, and so how can we get our own expectations. And that's obviously the beginning of a significant journey for people. And I think that does bring people into contact with a little bit more rejection, possibly, a little bit more misunderstanding, perhaps. And all those perhaps lead to a deeper understanding of why we need to be in an atmosphere of love as people. The whole piece about the coach and the coachee, or the supervisor and the coach being separate and working on a thing together, I think that's probably dissolving into how can we be humans together? How can we sit here and really touch each other at a deep level? How can we find attunement? All that.
So with more love in coaching, or with love in coaching, what feels possible or more possible?
I think we can get into much deeper connection with our own humanity. And I think we can get into much deeper connection with one another. My own influences, which I've been working with for a very long time, are largely from, Martin Buber's work's really important to me. And I think had I asked the question, well, as I did 3 or 4 years ago, how do I-thou relationships fit into the world of coaching? I would have got the response, well, they don't, because they're implying a mutuality that is kind of making our professional boundaries very porous. And I suspect now, if I asked the question, people would say, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea to me. And so I think as a species, we're being honest about the fact that we have created a mess, and perhaps we don't need to perform better to get out of that mess. We maybe need to actually find each other in a much more intimate and powerful way.
I quote this, it may or may not be true. I sometimes say that there isn't a spiritual practice in the world that doesn't have love at its heart, with the view that we are beings of love. We are hardwired for love. So why would love not be present, if buried, and vital and important in professional contexts?
I think I would go with that. I do think it's perhaps possible to separate ourselves from love by maybe giving ourselves over too much to our own shadow. But fundamentally, I mean, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think that kind of roots us in the fact that if we don't have love, we will be walking through the world in a very disabled way and a disjointed way. And we'll be probably separate from ourselves as well as from other people.
The word love is confronting and provocative and bold to use in any organizational context. And I think more so is the word intimacy, which you've used.
Yes, it is. And for me, key words around love are intimacy and mutuality and attunement. I mean, I think it's interesting that so many coaches are now kind of reading Thomas Abel's books and beginning to realize that I hesitate to say profession because I'm not sure about that, our sector has been quite into the world of separation, has kind of bought into that, has colluded to a large degree with that. And I think there's suddenly from nowhere almost, well, probably from the state of the world, which has exacerbated itself into greater chaos in the last 3-4 years, has come this admission that we've kind of performed our way out of relevance, and we need to find something else.
So my thread here, it's around what's the work for us coaches to do or consider doing in order to be able to risk or trust developing greater intimacy with our thinkers, with our coaching clients. What's your sense of what that might involve or ask of us?
Thank you, Helena. You're going to out me here. I think that for me, and I appreciate that a lot of codes of coaching conduct probably may not agree. But I do think that for me, I think the coach or the supervisor needs to take the first step and say, I'm going to be vulnerable with you. And as humans, we're coming here not as grasshopper and master, but we're coming here as two people. There's a wonderful piece, I'm sure we've talked before, but a big influence on me was the therapist Wilfred Bion, and still is, who talks about the need for the therapist, when I've interpreted that obviously as coach or supervisor, to come and shine intense beams of darkness into situations. And I guess my own story around that has been when I first met it, I was hot off the press of kind of doing everything and all that. And I thought, well, why would I do that? And then I moved towards a rather patronizing view, which was, well, if I'm going to be coaching you, Helena, and you get a little flicker of light, well, the worst thing I should do is to shine on my big beams of all that I know that will obliterate your light. So I will shine the darkness again performatively so that we can see your light. And that has evolved over the last 5-6 years or so into, no, if you get light, why would I be so arrogant as to assume you're seeing something that I've seen before? I would perhaps open myself up and become vulnerable and say, here, I'm dark here as well. Please, can you illuminate me? So I'm seeing more and more our being with relationship as being one where we're reaching a level place of mutuality and seeking to approach life in a mutual way. And so my skill as a coach or supervisor is not around how can I ask the questions that illuminate you there. It's more becoming how do I hold the space in a way that allows us both to go on a journey together.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about the phrase porous and porous boundaries. So it feels like you're describing a relationship or a session where each let each other in.
Yes, and let each other out.
Mm-hmm.
And let ourselves out. And I have a feeling that different kinds of people will be coming in to become coaches and so forth. I mean, one of the most exciting things for me at the moment is a really good friend of mine. She's been a professional actor for her whole life, is training to coach and bringing insights from how actors prepare each other to be together in the play and applying those into areas of psychological safety and stuff like that.
So I'm tracking back actually to a phrase that I use quite a lot. We coach out of who we are. We supervise from our autobiography. So it feels like you're saying the work we may need to do as coaches or to engage in as coaches isn't models and frameworks work. It's deep dive inner growth work. Like what, do you think? What can help prepare us to be intimate, vulnerable, porous as a coach when we may not have been that way thus far?
Great question. I think becoming intimate and porous as a human being is, for me anyway, the journey has been going. There's a wonderful, in Ken Wilber's most recent book, the Towards Radical Wholeness thing, it's finding radical, whatever it's called, it's about radical wholeness. He's got 469 pages of writing, of which the princely total of 3.5 pages are about opening up. No, far be it from me.
The 5 ups.
The 5 up, yeah. So he's got these 5 ups and they all get like about 80 pages each, except this opening up that gets 3.5 pages. And I kind of like that because it allows me to say what I like about it, because how can you contradict what's not there? And I guess for me, I'm using that, looking at my own life about how there's a movement from turning away from the stuff we can't handle and not bringing that into conversation, not bringing that even into thinking if we can avoid it. And we push stuff down, down, down. And so that leads us to actually deny that it might be there. It's not been buried so deep. So we move from the not being able to engage with the stuff we can't handle, I suppose, then into beginning to tentatively look at it. It's kind of gestalty. It rises up and so forth from the ground, but we look at it and well, maybe I could talk about that. Maybe I could think about it. And we have a lot of maybes around it. And we've got to go on the journey, I think, for ourselves first, of being comfortable with the stuff that we can't handle and even admitting that we can't handle it and seeing what happens if we do that and allowing that new opened up person that we have maybe constructed, maybe discovered, maybe a bit of both. I don't want to offend my constructionist colleagues. And so something has happened to bring this new opened up Ian into birth. And now the next thing is not just sort of keep him in some locked room in my home, but take him into my place and allow more emergence, allow myself opened up now to be engaging with other people and not expecting them to open up at this point, but being a person who is as opened up as possible, which may differ from day to day, and always inviting and saying, here I am, come and meet me. It's the Rumi thing out there, beyond rightness and wrongness, there's a field. Let's meet there.
There is a field.
Yeah.
So it's said that therapists clearly should go into therapy, coaches have a supervisor, but I'm also hearing that coaches, there is a call for therapeutic work that looks at our trauma, shadow work, work that is healing and restorative. That's sort of in part, at least, right? The territory you're in here?
Yes. Now, there are things about that I think we need to be careful about. I believe a trendy term for this is depth coaching, which I think is profoundly insulting to people that don't come that way. I think all coaching is the deep experience for whoever's going through it. I think that, though, what a lot of us cut our teeth on, which, to be honest, was pretty transactional stuff, will undoubtedly become the AI territory. And AI will do it significantly better than I could ever do it, because AI won't get bored with it. AI won't find attention wandering. AI won't do any of that stuff. It'll not be formulaic at times like I've been in my early days. It'll not be presumptuous. It'll just boom, boom, boom. It'll be the same. So what do we do if we don't try to look at where else we could be working? And I've got this feeling that there's going to need to be, certainly for me, there's had to be quite an engagement with a lot of academics around therapy, a lot of writing around therapy, a lot of thinking around therapy. And I've been challenged by it all, René Girard, I find incredibly challenging, where he says, all desire is mimetic. So therefore, what are goals? Are goals my own, or are they mimetic? Well, there's an interesting discussion to have. Lacan's interesting around. So all that stuff has informed a lot of my practice. Still wouldn't put an ad in the local paper saying, Ian, therapist, come and see me. But I do think that it informs my coaching.
And a question I've been looking forward to asking really is the link between, and I like the phrase opening up, because it takes me to the later stages of a vertical development or an adult development framework, this kind of expanding and including. I've always wondered if the later stages, the post-conventional stages of the adult development frameworks, are they more loving? Right, so now that's not the right way of framing it, right?
It's totally the right way of framing it.
Okay, well,
I really like that, and I think the answer is they can be. I think they open up. I think they open up for those of us who are trying to work and see that state of being that we could be in. I think they open up quite a lot of insights on how we can be more loving, without being all kind of cheap, kind of rom-com about it. And what does it mean to be loving? And for me, I don't want to be political here, so I'm trying to sort of phrase this with a non-political example. So I never find it hard to identify with people who I felt were getting a raw deal. I always thought, yes, I am that person in typical stick it on social media, get a badge for it way we've all had for the last few years. I am Charlie Hebdo and all that, but I am people who I feel are being persecuted or whatever. I find it much more difficult to say I am with the people who've been doing the persecuting. So identifying with those for whom I am, in whose defense I am marching, has been an easier thing than identifying with those whose actions I've been critical of. And so for me, learning about love has been learning to expand that, I guess, transpersonal understanding out into saying, no, all that is in me and I'm in all that. And coming to a much more honest assessment of myself, that I have it in me to be hurtful, and I have it in me to be unpleasant sometimes, and I have it in me to rush to judgment as much as I have it in me to be kind and to show grace and to show all those things. So I suppose, to go back to your question, the kind of deeper we dive into our sense of identity and the more insight we can get into what it means to live a transpersonal kind of life and see the world that way, the more challenging it is to love, because we realize that a lot of love is self-informed self-gratification. And really the calling is to see the whole of the cosmos as the beloved, really, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but I like it.
I can do that. And I've quoted this before on this series, which is Bert Hellinger, who founding father, arguably, of the systemic constellations field. He says love is a wide-angled lens. So
yes,
I think he's saying the more we come up and out, the more perhaps love we can let in. But I'm wondering, the phrase action logics is sometimes used to describe the different layers, levels, stages of adult development. Is there then a sort of an action logics for love? So how does love show up at expert or achiever as compared to alchemist? How does love show up in that framework, I wonder? Because if we go with the idea that we are all hardwired for love, it must show up at all stages.
I think so, yeah. So action logic's interesting. So the logic, the worldview that shapes my actions. And so if I'm looking through the lens of saying my identity is bestowed on me through what other people tell me it should be like, then I guess for me, loving them will involve a little bit of pandering to them. And loving them will involve a lot of listening to them. It'll involve a lot of really good things that ultimately will, if I'm being brutally honest, that ultimately will be, at least in part, about enhancing their understanding of the fact that I'm doing what they want me to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think, sometimes people in this adult development world talk about that as a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It keeps the world a happier place. It keeps the world a joyous place. Okay, occasionally Hallmark kind of creeps in and commandeers around it, but that's okay as well, So love in that way is quite concretely based. It's tangible. You said this, I read it that way and I'll do that in order to make you happy. And we don't put the bits in brackets which says make you happy, brackets with me, but we say just make you happy. In a more post-conventional way, well, when we look through that window, and I struggle with saying we grow into it, I just think there are windows there they're lenses, windows we can look at the world through. So if we're looking through the more post-conventional window, well, then we are effectively saying that primarily I'm doing this because I'm happy, brackets with me. So maybe love will take on a different shape. Perhaps also, if I'm really looking through that window with clarity, saying, and I can also integrate what makes me happy with what makes you happy with me. And I know happy is quite a reductionist word to say, but let it stand because it's good shorthand. And so we're doing that. And so I've expanded, like you said, it's a wider angle lens here. I'm seeing that actually I can make me happy and make you happy at the same time. And we're not sort of building a hybrid thing. We're not sort of building a head of a donkey and a backside of an elephant. We're saying, let's be generative here together and see what we can do that is bringing joy to each other and so forth. If we then could take a slight step and look through a transpersonal lens, I think what we're seeing is a bit different from that now. I'm kind of seeing that in some way I am reflected in you and you're reflected in me. And so the whole issue about who can I be to make you or me happy is kind of redundant. And so we see things differently. Yeah. And so love then is probably more ethereal. It's not about gratifying anybody.
Thank you. That's really helped me actually ground a few things. What I do want to move on to and give space to is that you've been for a while writing, studying, learning.
For too long.
A doctoral thesis.
Well, not doctoral. It was going to be, and then I thought this will take me the rest of my life. Okay. I'll be dead before this is finished. So I copped out at the master's by research level.
Very good.
And said, no, thank you. No more.
Very good. So a master's thesis.
Yeah. And that also was a shock because my previous master's was a professional master's and it was fine and I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I started this research master's and thought I'm on my own here. I'm finding my own thing. When they said, you want to make this a PhD, I thought, you know what? I really don't. I really, really don't. This could kill me.
So I know that it's taken you into love for sure. Mm-hmm. So if we hold the lens of love in coaching or love and coaching, something like that for us today, what was juicy or interesting or relevant from your research? So
my research was interesting. I came in the beginning, as you said, it was 3 years ago that I thought about it and 2 years ago that I started it and a month ago that I submitted it. So we'll see. But I come across a book by James Fowler talking about, he called it Stages of Faith because he's writing in 71 whenever all spirituality was understood in kind of religious terms back then. And he'd got hold of Jane Loinger's work on adult development and he did that. And I thought it'd be interesting to read that. I am a practicing Quaker, albeit a rather sweary one. And he just mentioned in there that he saw Quakerism as quite a developed spirituality. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, is that true? And so with the reductionism of the true masters by a research guy, I did a small number of interviews and I sort of styled them a little bit on Robert Keegan's subject-object interview. So I kind of asked them to talk about their spiritual experience and what they felt could be of value to leadership coaches. And then did the usual look for trends and blah, blah. Got that down from 170 down to 4 by, I don't know how, but just by purely, well, there's more people talking about that than there are about that. There's something pretty reductionist. And so I got those and there were 4 really interesting things, which were summed up by the title, Doing the Love Stuff, which my supervisor wouldn't let me have as a title of the thing. She said it had to be a bit more academic than that. But it was a direct quote from one of my people, so I could have thought it, but anyway, I didn't. So the 4 things were building a community of presence, which I think is pretty powerful because that's really learning to be with. And that's a thing that I'm experimenting with at the moment in several applications. The second thing was practicing collective mysticism. So rather than me doing my mystic thing on my own, we can maybe do it together and see, is there something energetic that can kind of bring us all to the same place and so forth? You'd have to think if that's possible, which I suspect it is, but if it's possible and we're coming energetically to the same place, you think that in some way that would have to manifest itself as being some manifestation of love. The third one was, the Quakers call it knowing each other in the things that are eternal. So I don't know about eternal. So I kind of rephrased it as getting to know each other and finding each other in the things that really matter. So that's intimacy and begin to have those conversations. And David Rook, the Heart Health founder, and I experimented with that at a thing in the summer that was actually pretty interesting. It was really interesting.
And I like this really big exploration into the abstract. And there may be people listening who are saying, I think I'm with you. And what does that look like in practice? So if we are bringing some of these three threads into our practice, and if we are practicing with love, what might you see me doing? How am I showing up in my coaching work?
Yeah. For me, and again, I would never presume, Helen, to say, oh, you should show up anywhere. For me, there's a lot about bravery. Sort of bravery, first of all, with myself. You know, what am I going to allow through the pores here? And how am I going to make sure I'm contracting properly as things come through the pores? And I think it really professionally puts a huge onus on me as a coach. So if you let something through the pores that we hadn't talked about in our last little conversation on contracting, I got to say, are you sure, Helena, that you really want to let this in? Are you absolutely sure? Or do we need to do any more building, adjusting, whatever? Because you know yourself. I mean, you know, people go on a roll and they tell you stuff and then they wish they hadn't. And so they avoid you and all that kind of thing. So I think that it puts a big contracting thing in the place. For me, it also puts a responsibility to let as much out of the pore as is coming in. And I know we're all told, look, it's not about you as a coach and it's not about you as a supervisor. It's about your client. And for me, I see that. So if I'm sharing from me because somehow I'm getting some kind of gratification from doing that, or because I'm trying to show how cool I am, if it's about me, well, then we're in the wrong conversation and I'm probably in the wrong job. If, on the other hand, I'm sensing that what you really need to know is you're not alone in this dilemma, then I think it's okay to do that. And that, I think, is what a community of presence is about. You know, we're being present with each other. And that means that I'm not treating you as somebody who should tell me everything and end up knowing nothing about me. There's no mutuality in that. That's separation. Me, guru, you, disciple. And I think that's not cool. And I appreciate that there are a lot of people I respect who would say that that isn't ethically correct for a coach. And I would respectfully differ. But that doesn't mean I'm right. So there's that whole, how do we negotiate a porous boundary as opposed to how we negotiate a set boundary? And I think that there's a lot of ongoing contracting there and a lot of reciprocity, but also just making sure that our reciprocity is grounded in love and not in self-gratification, which requires us to do a lot of reflexivity in the middle of an emergent conversation. So that's another requirement. We need to begin to practice our reflexivity significantly, begin to train ourselves to be thinking and evaluating as we speak without losing focus on the person we're talking to. We call it, Shan, my business partner, we call it listening to several frequencies at the same time, which again is something we probably don't come out of the womb knowing how to do. But then also there's the invitation to talk. I think we have to prove to people, probably over time, that we are the kind of person who they can talk to and that they can be with. I can't kind of market myself as I'm the being with guy because I'm not the being with guy. I'm only one person who is able to be in conversations with another person or other people, and together we create the being with thing. It's not like I can't trademark it or anything like that. There's that. But then there is also, I think, just learning. I mean, I sang this thing with David Rook and we had a group of people and we had two questions we wanted them to discuss. You know, one was, how deeply have you loved? The other one was, what's your relationship with your own death? So you got to put the questions out there, the things that are eternal, you know, the things that really matter. You got to be prepared to go on that. And to be told I'm not going to talk about that. If that's the response, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm really understanding hearing you finish those sentences while you started with the word bravery. And I'm also thinking of how, well, actually, I was going to say complex it is to listen to several frequencies at the same time and be working on so many levels. And what's that lovely phrase from somebody, I have no idea who, about the simplicity on the other side of complexity? I have no idea who said that. People listening will be shouting at the microphone, but...
Well, there's Google. Just Google it. You'll find it.
Yes. But something about, you know, you mentioned the Rumi quote that there is a field out there. There's also a place of stillness, I think, and mindfulness that I would very much hope to get to when I kind of feel into what you've just described, which is really rich. Thank you for that.
By way of example, maybe I watched it this kind of where we can get to, it kind of blew my mind. As part of Shannon and I were watching a coach and a coachee as part of an assessment thing. We were just watching them in action. And they were talking away about whatever it was. And at one point, the person who was a coach, they said, I have a sense that this here will mean something to you. It's a spiritual sign. And the other person kind of reached under their desk and they produced a picture of a labyrinth and said, here's how I usually work things. So we're seeing something energetically interesting happening. And I think the source of that kind of heart-to-heart connection, it can only be love. I'm not going to learn that in a textbook. I'm not going to learn it in a model. I've been reading a lot of Marion Woodman. She wrote in the 70s, but I think it's interesting. I don't know if this is in any way related to love, but I have a feeling that for our sector's future, we probably need to be less absorbed by frameworks and models created by men and begin to look at models and frameworks created by women. Because the only well-known coaching framework I know that was created by a woman is Nancy Klein, which is radically different from any framework created by a man.
And what I was thinking too was I was watching myself get caught up in how intense or difficult or complex it would be to listen to several frequencies. And I was then remembering that when I can let the trying harder go and drop into present stillness, when I can find spaciousness within, then the work happens, or then love comes through, or then I'm certainly a better coach. And I'm thinking too, was it Marion Woodman who wrote a lot about perfectionism?
Yeah.
So there's something about trying less hard and dropping into spaciousness and stillness and silence inside in some way.
Absolutely. And the other word to tack onto intimacy, which is equally dangerous, maybe more dangerous, is tenderness.
Oh.
And I think that's a really important word for us in our coaching.
I'm mindful of time, so I want to just ask the always helpful question of in these last few minutes, what would you like to pick up on or continue talking about? Maybe it's tenderness, but maybe it's something else that you'd really hope to get to that we may not have so far gotten to.
We've covered a lot. Tenderness is important, I think, to me in this, because I'm not convinced that every gig that we get invited to, we've been invited with the word tenderness in mind. And it can be easy for us as coaches more than supervisors. So let's hold that back. I think as coaches, it can be quite easy for us to collude with a non-tender agenda because we're getting paid to do that. I don't have a formula. I think it's a place we have to find ourselves. So how can I hold this space? How can I hold this other human in a way? I mean, Jung said it, when you're with another human soul, just be another human soul. And that whole how do we be human souls together, I think requires significant tenderness because we're wonderful. Like every person we meet is quite magnificent and it's a privilege. I reckon there's nobody we can't learn from. I've learned most of all from my grandchildren, I think. And you hold them tenderly, you hold those relationships tenderly. You probably get a bit sort of too generous with it, but you come at it with a real open heart and whatever. And so I think for me, a revolution of tenderness would be great in the work that we do.
Lovely. Thank you, Ian. Really, thank you.
Pleasure.
And for those people who would like to find out more about your work and what you do, how can they find you?
They just should get in touch. Ian@hearthill.co.uk. But just an email. I'm always up for conversations.
Lovely. Ian@hearthill.co.uk. Ian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Helena. Great to see you again.
Likewise. Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, to advance the coaching profession, and to make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There you can explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools and models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.